Hey, it's a Humble Collector here, and in today's video, we're doing something different than normal. So, this is going to be a weird video, let me tell you. So, first of all, we're making traditional German Springerle cookies. At least, I think that's how it's pronounced, Springerle. Very traditional Christmas cookie in Germany. Now, the reason that we're doing this video is because I actually picked up, a couple months ago, this lovely World War I era cookie cutter and thought, well, it'd be kind of fun to use it, make some cookies. So we'll see how that goes. Now, the other reason behind this video, the reason I bought that cookie cutter is because I knew a collector very briefly over in Germany who has since passed away. And he was big into bakeries and baking stuff from World War II. And so I thought this would be a good video to kind of make some cookies. He actually had his own iron cross mold, which is how I even knew those existed to begin with. And, I'll show you some of the items I got from him over the course of our correspondence, because I did buy a couple things from him over the 6 or so months that we were in communication. And, yeah, just kind of do this video as a tribute to him, but then also, get the chance to make some fun cookies. I have some non-Prussian baking molds here as well that we'll get to use. So the recipe's already a bit scuffed. I will link it down below, but I have to substitute some things because I thought I had baking powder, and I do not, so we're going to have to do baking soda and lemon juice to make that work. The recipe also calls for ground anise seeds, and I accidentally bought anise extract, so we're converting that as well. So this is pretty much its own separate recipe at this point. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're supposed to mix the flour and the baking powder together until well blended. Probably should have staged my equipment beforehand, but hey, this isn't a cooking channel. I don't do much baking, so this is going to be experience for all of us. What's good for me? We'll use that. All right. So the recipe calls for 3.5 cups of all-purpose flour. Three cups, and the recipe calls for 3.5. So I'll grab a half measure here. This is all in American units of measure. I'm not converting it, so for my European audience at home, you'll have to do that on your own. All right, so 3.5 cups of sugar. Almost dropped that. This is going great. And next up, we need the teaspoon of baking powder. So, as I mentioned, I don't actually have baking powder. I have baking soda. All right, so since I don't have baking powder, the conversion is for every teaspoon of baking powder, it's half a teaspoon of baking soda, and half a teaspoon of lemon juice. I'm assuming that I would want to mix those together to combine them before putting those in there. I might be completely wrong on that. We'll just do that in the measuring cup since it's here. All right, so, and half of a teaspoon of lemon juice. Like I said, forgot that I thought that I had baking powder and did not. However, I do have lemons. They're rather small, unfortunately. But what we're going to do here is we're going to juice this real quick. So we're going to have some nice fresh lemon juice, which is going to be great, probably. Okay, grab a knife here. All right. Juice that real quick. And we'll juice the other half, though I think that should be more than enough. Okay. Oh, it does actually have a spout there. This is going to be messy. I'm going to do that over the sink, I think. All right. That actually wasn't too bad. So, half a teaspoon of lemon. Yeah, look at that. Doing science stuff there. Just mix that a little bit. Okay. So we'll go ahead and put that into the flour. All right, good enough. Now we get to mix that together. All right, so set that aside because next up in the larger bowl that I have here, we're going to be putting, hello everyone, you can see my reflection apparently. Let's see, that's going to be sugar, eggs, and vanilla. So I need 2 cups of sugar. It's also hard cooking when the camera is like right in the middle where I need to do everything. That's 1 cup of sugar, and the second one here. And that's 2 cups of sugar. So we're combining that, the eggs, and vanilla. So we need 4 eggs. And last but not least, a ½ teaspoon of vanilla extract. All right, ½ a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Perfect. Now, next step is to mix that all together with an electric mixer until light and frothy. All right, I never used this mixer before, so we're gonna see how this goes. All right, well, the recipe said to mix it for 5 to 8 minutes till it was light and frothy. I've actually done it a bit longer than 8 minutes. It doesn't seem, it seems a little frothy. I mean, that's light, right? Probably. All right, so now I'm supposed to keep mixing it while slowly sifting in the flour from earlier. And basically, this will combine into a nice sturdy dough. So, we'll start doing that now. You know what? I almost forgot the anise extract. I better put that in now. One of my neighbors apparently chopping down a tree. How nice of them. It's been one of the problems with filming this video. I've tried to film it a couple times now, but every time that I have the time to actually, do this, it seems like my neighbors were using heavy equipment somewhere. All right, yeah, put that in now. Okay. Ooh, that smells great. I know anise isn't everybody's favorite, flavor, but I actually quite like it. Alright. It seems sticky enough to, form into the molds that we need to use, so I'm going to call that good. So let's see. Move this to the side here. Alright, so hands are covered in dough. Alright, I'm supposed to sift a little bit of flour onto the work area here. That's good. And we're supposed to take a handful of dough at a time. So we'll grab a chunk of it there. We're supposed to roll it out to about 1/4 inch. As you can see, there's a reason I don't bake very often. The problem is we're also getting a little thin there. Okay, I mean it's probably 1/4 inch, right? Well, tell the truth. Go ahead and take, before we use our molds here, we're supposed to throw some confectioner's sugar over the top there. All right. Oh, moment of truth. All right. Well, it seems to have kind of worked. And then we're supposed to use a knife to kind of cut around the shape here. Spatula here. Is that going to come out in one piece? Oh, you know what? Actually, not bad. Just clean it a little bit more here. But yeah, there you go. See how it looks when it's done baking, but I mean... Alright, so as you can see here, we filled up these trays. So, this was the first couple. I'm not sure how those are going to turn out. These ones actually are looking pretty good. So, what I figured out, and probably should have known from the beginning, is that the confectioner sugar you're putting on top of the dough is basically what's allowing it to release from the mold. You want to make sure you have a nice even coating of that on there. So as you can see, these look way better, especially that one, compared to the first couple that I did. So these are supposed to sit covered with a cloth for 8 hours. It's currently 11:43, which means that I will see you guys at about 8 p.m. Yeah, so while we let the dough rest, I figure this will be the part of the video where we talk a little bit about Rainer and kind of why we're doing this. So, out of respect for his family and their privacy, I won't mention his last name. I do actually have a photo of him from the Christmas card he sent me shortly before he passed, and I won't show that either, again, just out of respect for his family's privacy. But yeah, Rainer, I just bought a death card from him off of German eBay like I've done many, many times, and as often as the case, inside the envelope when I got it was a handwritten note saying, hey, I've got a lot more of these cards. If you're interested, here's my phone number. And I hate texting people. I would much rather just send an email because that gives me time when I get it and I can think about it. But, I was intrigued because I think he said that he had something like 5,000 death cards, which got my attention. So I reached out, and it became quickly apparent that Rainer did not speak any English or couldn't read English, so I had to translate what I was saying into German and then translate his messages to me back from German into English. And I also found out he was a bit of a character. So Rainer unfortunately had a lot of health problems. He was an older gentleman. He was missing half of his tailbone and was in a lot of pain from that. I'm still a bit unclear what actually happened. I know he's been wheelchair bound for the last decade or two of his life, it sounded like. But the actual reason they removed part of his tailbone, I'm not sure. He said that they weren't supposed to, and that it was like some kind of accident, medical accident. I don't really know. But long story short, Rainer was wheelchair bound and was in a lot of pain all the time, pretty much. But he had been a collector for decades, and he had started to kind of sell some stuff off, because he knew he was kind of getting toward the end there. Yeah, I also kind of got the impression he was a bit lonely. I know that his daughter came and took care of him pretty often, but it's clear that the camaraderie of collecting was kind of the thing that he really looked forward to. He would text me good morning, good night every day. He'd send memes over, many of which were rather esoteric and a bit beyond me. But he was also a wealth of knowledge. I mean, this is a guy who'd been collecting for decades. And his area of interest was really fascinating to me because he was interested, as I mentioned earlier, in field bakery stuff. The reason being that his grandfather apparently had been a baker and served in World War I. His father had been a baker and served in World War II. And he had been a baker for a while. So that was something that he liked baking. That was his passion. It's what he liked to do. And so apparently he said at one point he had thousands of items related to field bakeries. And actually, most of the death cards I ended up buying from him over the course of our correspondence were actually for either guys that were in field bakery units or guys that had been bakers and confectioners and things before the war, which is kind of interesting. But that brings me to the first set of items I wanted to talk about. I can't remember if the unboxing for these has been released yet or not, but there's just a lot of really cool photos here of field bakeries and stuff that you really don't see very often. Let me zoom out here so I can try to get the whole thing in. Lots of really cool stuff. These guys, this giant baguette that they're baking there. Even some stuff from some field butchers and things as well. And this is just a side of the war that you don't really see very often. I mean, I certainly had never thought about, field bakeries and kind of how they operated and things. But this is one set of photos that I bought from him. There was a different set that he ended up selling to somebody else. I'm kind of kicking myself that I didn't grab those as well. Most of these photos, I believe, were taken during the French campaign and a little bit from the early part of Barbarossa. But yeah, just look at this giant warehouse full of bread here. It's pretty crazy. But yeah, just really fascinating stuff. Now, one of the things that he told me over the course of our correspondence was that he used to make these Iron Cross cookies and would, send them to his collecting friends all over Europe, basically. Now, his mold, I think he sent me a picture at some point. I'll put it up on screen. What he was doing was a bit different than what we've done here today. Apparently, the way that he would do that, they'd be almost like a kind of like a sugar cookie, and he would do two parts using the an actual cutout cookie mold. And he would fill the inside with some kind of jam, and then he would coat the whole thing in chocolate, which sounds amazing. Unfortunately, I've not been able to track down one of those, but shortly after he passed away, I was looking on German eBay and seeing if I could find one, and that's when I found the one that we use today. Now, the other thing with Rainer that's kind of fascinating to me in particular is that because he grew up in the 60s, he was saying, he knew a lot of World War II veterans. Like I said, his dad was a World War II veteran, and he had conversations with a lot of guys, from all branches of the German military during the Second World War. Heer, Luftwaffe. He was actually in the Luftwaffe for a little bit in the, I think, 70s. And, because of that, he had a lot of these kind of personal relationships. So one of the more interesting sets I bought from him, and unfortunately I don't have the photo of the veteran that came with these, because some of these documents were with a friend of mine trying to get transcribed here. But he actually lived with a vet for a while that was a pioneer in the 335th Infantry Division, and was actually writing a bunch of articles, for veterans magazines post-war. So I have a lot of his articles here. I have 2 of the copies of the magazine that he would write for, Alta Kameraden, which is pretty interesting. I think a lot of times he wrote anonymously, so I don't think his name's actually mentioned on any of these. But yeah, Rainer apparently lived in his basement for a while at some point, and became friends with him. And I guess that when he passed away, the veteran's girlfriend gave him all of his paperwork. So I'm slowly working on getting that transcribed, like I said, through a friend of mine right now. Hopefully, eventually, I'll be able to put together a nice video related to that topic. And yeah, of course, the death cards were the big thing. Unfortunately, I don't know what happened to Rainer's collection after he passed on. I know he had a lot of collecting friends in Germany still, and I'm assuming that he already had people lined up to take care of things, and I didn't want to bother his family after he passed. But, I only scratched the surface of some of the cards. He was also, I see a lot of myself in the way that he kind of handled selling off his collection, because he would show me pictures of things. Amazing death cards. Top quality, stuff that you would never have seen. Lots of super highly decorated SS guys, Knight's Cross winners, Close Combat Clasp and Gold winners, stuff that's really hard to find. And none of it was for sale. He showed me a lot of interesting photos of trucks and things from SS Das Reich that he also didn't want to sell me. So, over the course of our time, talking, like I said, other than the photos, the collection from the veteran there of the 335th, 335th, I probably only bought maybe 2-3 dozen death cards from him total. We were talking about, working out a bulk price that I would pay him whatever amount of money and he'd send me X number of cards, but unfortunately we never got the chance. But one of the things that I found was really interesting is that for some of those rarer cards, he did actually send me copies of them. So, for example, this is a very fascinating Kriegsmarine card here for Hermann und Otto Tiefenthaler. Very cool having them both in the same photo, but it also had this gorgeous plate design on it with the eagle and the naval standard and the cross. Now, this is obviously a copy. It's just printer paper, basically. And from what I gathered, it seems like back in the day, early days of the internet and things, Rainer and a bunch of his friends would make copies of stuff like this so that they had them for references. Because I think I've talked about that on the channel before too, is that back in the day it wasn't uncommon to print off web pages or compile your own resources because stuff was kind of hard to find on the early internet. So this wasn't done maliciously in a attempt to scam people. This was just hey, this is a really rare card. Here, I'm going to make a copy of it so that you can have it as a reference in your collection in case you ever stumble upon another or whatever. So I have a few of these. I do maintain a thread on the War Relics forum talking about fake cards. I have not uploaded any of these ones that I got from Rainer because I don't think they really meet the spirit of the thread, right? Is me finding cards in the wild and talk about them. These are very contained instances, though. Now that Rainer's gone and who knows where his collection is, it's quite possible that some of those are on the market. Actually, I updated that thread recently with a SS card that was a fake, and the paper quality is almost identical to this. I have to wonder if that's actually one of Rainer's cards. But yeah, basically, like I said, he contacted me every day, and all of a sudden I didn't hear from him for 3 days, and he'd been in and out of hospital, I think, probably 3 times over the course of our conversations. And, after I didn't hear from him for a couple of days, I reached out. I think the last message he sent me was that he was going into the hospital, and, his daughter ended up messaging me back and saying that, he passed on. So, yeah, that's pretty much the story for why I'm doing this. Part of it's, of course, because I think it's kind of fun to use the antique stuff for what it was meant for, and we're getting into the Christmas season. Figure make some cookies will be kind of fun, but also reflecting on an acquaintance that I lost right at the beginning of 2025. Because collecting is an interesting hobby. It's full of very interesting people. And it's all about really personal relationships, right? It's the relationships between the collector and the person that they're buying from, the collector and the person that they're asking questions to. The collector and also the person who, used to own these items. There is a weird, I'm not going to say it's a personal connection, but sometimes you're researching some of these guys. There's actually a World War I Canadian grouping that I have that was going to do a video for this year and just kind of ran out of time. So hopefully next year I'll get around to it. But, he was actually living pretty close to where I'm at here in Western PA for a little bit, and, he went back up to Canada, joined the Canadian military, ended up in a Highlander unit over in France. It was killed in October 1918, I believe, if I remember off the top of my head. But, he, like I said, he was from a local area. He was a Highlander. I've played the bagpipes for 14 years now. So stuff like that, you kind of feel like a connection to these people that you've never met. And that's kind of the case with Rainer. I never met him, never talked to him on the phone. All of our conversation was via text because of the language barrier. One more thing, I guess, before I wrap this up, because like I said, I don't have a script for this. I'm kind of rambling at this point. I don't know how much of this I'm going to cut. But he actually had in his possession for a while, because I asked him about this since he'd been collecting death cards forever, had he ever seen print plates for death cards? And he said that he actually owned some for a while. His brother apparently either worked for a printer or was cleaning out a printer that had closed and found a stack of them in a closet somewhere and had given them to Rainer. Rainer, unfortunately, had sold them years prior and had no idea where they'd gone off to since then. But that does confirm that some of the print plates are out there floating around in a collection in Germany probably, or if not somewhere else in Europe. So, you got to help me a little bit on my own quest to kind of find more information about the actual mechanical construction of the cards and things. But yeah, I guess to kind of wrap up this long rambling section, just remember to appreciate the people that you meet through the hobby. Sometimes we have our disagreements about things. Sometimes people have a different take on an item and its authenticity or whatever. But, at the end of the day, military is a pretty small niche group of people. And, the relationships you build with people with similar interests are important. And, you should, honor those and, treasure them while you can. Like I said, I didn't know Rainer long, but he definitely made an impact on me. He's definitely missed. I think about him a lot, actually. So, yeah, cherish the people in your life, and let's go and see if those cookies are looking good. All right, it's been 8 hours. Cookies have definitely hardened up a little bit, it seems like, so they should be ready to go. Oven's preheated 250, so 25-30 minutes. These should be set, and we'll actually get to try one. So hopefully they turn out well. Now, one thing I'll say here, I think I cooked these a little too long. I left them in a couple extra minutes because it didn't look like they'd really gotten that light brown kind of color. They looked pretty much the same as when I put them in, other than having puffed up substantially. So you'll notice on the bottom of these, they've kind of fully cooked. They're supposed to be more light and the top, I believe. That being said, they smell good. I'm sure they're going to taste fine. I just think the texture might be a little bit off. So let these cool for a little bit, and then I will give one of them a try and see how they are. All right, the cookies have cooled, and I've put together a bit of a nice display here with some of the better-looking ones. And yeah, I'm actually impressed by the sharp level of detail, as you can see there. This one in particular turned out really nice. Probably could have done a better job, cleaning up the edges on that. They did puff up a bit more than I anticipated. As far as taste goes, I saved this kind of blemished one here to eat, so take a bite and see how it is. So yeah, definitely what I said earlier. Left them in there too long. Definitely crunchier than they're supposed to be. It's supposed to be more of a soft cookie, is my understanding. The anise flavor is pretty good. It's present, and you can taste it, but it's not overpowering, because that can be a pretty strong flavor sometimes. But yeah, so as you saw, this is a bit rough getting this all together. I'm not a baker. I don't bake or cook much in general. But yeah, no, I think that overall I learned a lot doing these. And I think the next batch will turn out even better. But yeah, let me know what you guys think down below. Hope you guys are all having a great holiday, and I will see you all again very soon.